Hello, everyone. You're now listening to The Common Thread, the official podcast of the Howard Thurman Center. My name is Howard DePass Jr.
I'm Greg Wilson.
Issa Kenyatta.
And today we have two lovely poets on the show. The topic of today's show is just revolving around poetry. And if you all just want to introduce yourselves and I guess say where you work, like what year you're in, and so on.
Well, I'm Allison Adair, and I am not any year because I was the years at PU of 2002 to 2012 as a faculty member, as a poet and a teacher in the writing program, including different classes on American poetry, international poetry, the forms of poetry, and the most celebrated section, Poetics of Rap.
Yes. Yeah. Can you get like a small round of applause for Poetics of Rap? Yes.
I am Shamoore Simpson. I am currently a senior at Boston University, and I'm actually studying human physiology. And yeah, I haven't taught any classes. So.
But
rocked Poetics of Rap as a student there.
Yes.
When did you take that?
I took that first semester of my freshman year.
It's not when he took it.
No, I took it second semester. Yeah,
but I
did 2 semesters.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was great.
Four sections, 2 semesters, so 2 sections.
It was a very hard, because I heard about it going into VU, and I heard it was really hard to get into, but I got in it.
Yeah.
I did.
Listen,
You guys have the honor of being on a special show, and do you know why today's a special show, Howard?
I do not. Why I say it's special?
Because it is our last show.
It is.
Wow.
Oh yes, it
of
is.
the semester.
It is the last one of the semester. The last one for Greg and I. Issa, you'll definitely be returning.
He's carrying on the legacy.
This is graduation.
I know.
Hey, round of applause.
Yeah.
But all the more reason for us to celebrate it with you all. Instead of starting off with what sort of drew you all onto poetry, like if we can just continue on sort of like with the Poetics of Rap theme, just like Shamoore, can I get your experience on like what the class was like and sort of just like how it helped you appreciate poetry more or as a artist?
Start off by explaining what it is, because I feel like because it's not here anymore, unless it still is.
Nobody
It
can touch
me,
that.
unfortunately, until someone else picks up the task, I guess.
So people are going to be definitely curious as to what it is and what they missed out on.
I guess for me, the class itself was literally looking at rap as poetry, and I never ever really combined the two together. And just getting into the nitty gritty of like lines, like we would sit in class over one sheet of paper and just go through everything, like go in.
2 weeks on Ice Cubes.
2 weeks. Still to this day, when I hear that song, I question like, what does he really mean? Just a lot. And then I guess for me, like the culmination of my experience with her was struggling over my final paper, which was about Drake. And
was it a song or?
It was Drake in general. It was the idea that Drake not coming as like a heart, like doesn't have the background of a gangster. Everybody knows he was on Degrassi.
Right.
Everyone everyone knows he was like that good boy, but yet he could still bring that kind of energy, and he could still get a lot of respect, and trying to figure out what was it, like what happened. And it was so hard for me to try to explain that when I was sitting in my sessions with Allie, she's just like, you just got to pick through everything. You just have to, I don't know, you have to figure out. I don't know. She pushes you. It was a great class.
I actually remember that paper, and I mean, it's you ask any teacher, and they're gonna have fingerprint memories of some of these things. And if I remember correctly, you had a part where you talked about like his presentation of women in his songs, and we even talked about in our conversations about the paper, how like Drake combined singing with rapping, and like how he was sort of seeking to redefine like
what rapping is, like
Right.
And who owns it and who gets it, and how the hook is involved and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's a good paper.
That's awesome.
It yielded fruit, let's say.
I know we've talked a bunch of like already just like one-on-one about your experiences with teaching that class, but if you want to just share like how was that your first time teaching a class that involved like poetry and rap like that?
And what even inspired it?
Right.
Well, I think so. I taught it the first time in 2010, and I had arrived in 2002. And I, had been a rap fan for already more than probably like 20 years, 15 years, something like that. And I was waiting for someone else to do it, who I thought had more credibility, or who, was not a dilettante, was not someone who was interested as a hobby, but had done, like Adam Bradley, like Trisha Rose, the people whose books we used, who had really treated it like a study. And I, as a poet, felt like I was thinking about it with all the rigor and with all the heart and with all the intellect and all that stuff that I brought to my own work and to other literature. But I just questioned whether I was enough of an expert to do it. And at the end, I thought, and this is where I would get into swearing, but I'm not going to. At the end, I thought, well, oh heck, well, gosh darn it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. And because like no one else is, and I did my homework. I mean, I already, I built the class around things that I was comfortable questioning and that I knew how to model responsible modes of investigation for. But, I did my homework, and I also designed the class so that the students were the experts too. It wasn't a question of memorizing my theories about things. It was, here's something that's important to all of us, so let's treat it in a way that we treat other things that aren't important to us. I also feel like there's a real political political statement to be made about like what gets in and what's not in terms of the spectrum of university classes.
Right.
And I thought this is something that's influencing people's day, like on the daily, like everyone, faculty, teachers, administrators, students, like the siblings of the students, everything,
right.
It seemed important and it's owned by the students. So I thought I really wanted people to have like a class where they were asked to reconsider something that was meaningful, but they kind of took for granted. And I will say, something to know about BU is that there was zero resistance. There was only enthusiasm from every administrative turn. It was easy to put together. People were excited about it and happy the students were excited about it.
Yeah, and just kind of going off of that, what do you think it is about rap or like this type of art form that makes it so appealing to like people of our generation and generations prior when it first started? I think about poetry, and when you go into a literature class, like poetry is like Shakespeare, like the classics, like that, but they don't really touch on contemporary art or contemporary rap songs as being a poetic type of form. What do you think is it about this form that really connects with young people and like people in general today?
Can I ask you first?
Oh, well.
Classic Allie.
I mean.
Hard to break out of teacher mode.
I mean, yeah, but for me, I'm not personally a huge like rap fan because I haven't like delved deep into it. I mean,
what do you think attracts people?
What attracts people to it?
Yeah, even erroneously.
I mean, I think generally it comes from the idea that you can express yourself through paper or through lyrics. And that comes through any type of art form. But in particular, why did rap take such a long time to come into play? That's what I want to know, because it's still young. And will it still live on as these other classics have, such as blues and like jazz, and you have like Aristotle, like you have like Aristotle like in Greek literature.
Poetic.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wondering why.
Fundamental.
Right, this one's still kind of young in comparison to others. Why is it that it's so attractive now, and will it successfully still sustain its attractiveness about? So that's my question to you guys.
I mean, I think to sort of start to address that question, unlike a lot of other art forms, it is a youth movement. It's founded by the youth. I mean, so inherently the youth are going to embrace it because there's not sort of this hierarchy above that's telling you how to do certain things. Everyone gets to sort of define it themselves. So
there's a sense of freedom in it.
Sense of freedom that attracts people to it. So going off that.
No, I think I would just amend that by saying there's, I was thinking about this with, I was listening to Public Service Announcement, number 10 on the Black Album. I've been obsessed with that since like October. Like it's a problem. I'm having an issue. But in case, I was thinking like that whole album, like a lot of, not just rap but hip hop, like there's this idea of illusion. And like illusion with an A, illusion and sampling and all that stuff. And I feel like in addition to the freedom of it being kind of owned by the writers and owned by the rappers, and there's also an awareness of a precedent, of an expectation, like what's on the books, and how is a person's response going to change, alter, or reject that. And that's one of the things I think makes it, like you were saying, appeal to youth, which is that it's informed, it's aware, it's educational, but it's also kind of rebellious and kind of
Absolutely.
revolutionary.
Yeah.
And not in a way that's like, kind of cheesy, easy, like fighting with your parents kind of rebellion, but in a way that is really generative, like it's going to say something. I also, one of the things you said before about how it's relatively new, I would actually challenge that perspective. I was thinking last night after watching the Strivers Row stuff, how funny it is that spoken word is called spoken word. Because I thought, at first it was just the word.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
just word, and
Yeah.
then people started writing it down. And so remember, let's not forget, like, who had access to paper even, and who had access to printing, and who had access to writing things down.
Wow, yeah.
And even like the great classical epics were oral. They were delivered in part. People would memorize them, go to town. You guys know this, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's not as much of an initial push or a catalyst for something, but a restoration of the word to the people.
So basically, Socrates was rapping back in the day.
Yeah.
Legendary bars.
I'm trying to think of like what rapper he would be. I'm in the like KRS-One region. Like,
Definitely,
it would be like all
KRS-One.
questions. I feel like it would be like intellectual rhythm of like Busta Rhymes with
Right.
like a teaspoon of like KRS-One.
Oh my goodness.
Funny.
No, that is amazing. We talk about. Sorry, this is just a great conversation. I have to laugh. Yeah, no.
You can't graduate. That's what it is.
Exactly. We talk about rap. We talk about spoken word and like the restoration of that rap's provided and so on. And I know Shamoore that's very dear to your heart, in particular spoken word. Like just from the experiences that like we've had together through writing and so on. Can you just like talk a little bit about like what drew you to spoken word in the first place? Like how who inspires you? Like how do you start writing? When you know when to stop? Just that whole aspect of it.
Wow. Well, it started with written poetry. In elementary school, actually. Just English class was my favorite class, period. That's what it was. In high school, that's when it started to develop a little bit more. I wasn't really like a fighter. I was you got on my nerves, I go home and write in my journal. So that kind of person. Spoken word didn't start until I got here in college, actually.
Oh, wow.
It didn't start until actually after Allie's class. Just see.
To get to these bars.
Actually, my first, if I want to say it, my first rap was called Comfy Swag. And I was, yes,
Oh,
it was
God,
an
I
assignment for
remember
class. We had to use, it was a good day. We had to use
right.
that beat and create our own rap. And I was just
wish we
like,
could do this
I
right now.
can't
I know.
rap. Like, I can't rap for my life. I remember telling her that, and she was like, all of you guys, I think you can't rap. You've been in this class way too long not to write something. She was like, it doesn't have to be long. So I remember sitting there, and my final like homework was like wasn't even typed out or anything. It was like on a sheet. It was on like an actual written sheet, and I was in class. I was so hype, like so hype about it. And I think I actually showed it to my mom. But yeah, my spoken word started with Comfy Swag, like my first rap, and then after that, yeah, it kind of took off. And watching Strivers Row, that's where I pull my inspiration from. And
Right. Elaborate on who they are a little bit.
oh, Strivers Row.
I mean, wait, real quick, before we get to that.
Yes.
Track back. So you said in high school and even in middle school, you were hitting your journal. So
Yes.
what kind of stuff was that? That wasn't poetry? Was that just like
That
I'm
was just
writing
whatever
to
was on my
express
head.
thoughts?
It wasn't formed, and it was just, I guess you can call it freeform writing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it was
Okay.
just whatever was in my head at that time.
Right.
If I couldn't explain how I was feeling, then yeah, it would be more figurative and whatnot. But yeah, I think I went through a lot of journals, but it was just easier to do it that way.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So Strivers Row.
So Strivers Row.
Uh-huh.
Strivers Row is a spoken word group. These artists come from different walks of life. They are, I want to say they're based in New York, but they're actually all over the place.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember how I came upon them. It was probably procrastinating on YouTube.
The best way to find
But,
out.
Yeah, pretty much. But I want to say the first piece I ever heard until this day, that's like my favorite piece, and Howard knows this, it was Strive. It was
wow.
the amount of like just power someone could have in their voice. And even not in like volume, but just in like, it was like an aura, and it was insane. So I think I've watched that millions and millions of times, and from there I just kept looking. It literally opened up an entire new world. So
wow,
yeah,
that's awesome.
Would you say that poetry has freed you in a sense, as far as like letting you know that your limitations that you might have placed on yourself before don't exist in a sense, you know? Because for me, like when I'm in my zone, let's say if I'm writing, then I feel it's a freeing experience. Like it's kind of like you're flying in a sense.
Absolutely.
You feel at your most powerful peak.
Absolutely.
Is that what poetry does for you? And is it just through spoken word, or is it like written, or like is there a certain form that really makes you feel like, yo, I'm Shamoore, like, like I know I'm killing.
I got that comfy swag.
You're
I guess
the comfy is.
I'm gonna hear that forever. I guess, I mean, I don't really feel limited at most times. I guess for me, poetry kind of, it sets the bar, and I'm very competitive. Like, you can ask Allie, I want A's. Like, I don't want anything less. So it sets the bar. When I listen to artists like that, or when I see how crazy people can get with, like, 3 words, like, I'm going to be like, all right, I need to do something where I feel like I've at least equaled that or something. So, it's freeing, but at the same time, it challenges me, which is what I like.
I think that's also a good way to describe rap music as a whole. I mean, that sort of reflects back to what you were saying, that, you know, people are, you know, they're expressing themselves in an unlimited way, but they're also being pushed to that next level, like you sort of exhibited.
Absolutely. What did you want to?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, one thing we haven't talked about just to head back for a second, the Poetics of Rap class, is that all of our conversations about rap and the lyrics and the rhythms and all that stuff were paired with quote-unquote traditional poems.
Yes.
You know, and I feel like that's something, like, where you were headed, you know, a second ago, Howard, that's something where the idea of, like, seeing what's out there and then striving to get in conversation with it is really valuable. That's why I think, like, hip-hop in general already does that. Again, not to harp on this, but, like, with sampling and illusion, that there's the idea of, I'm not going to, like, participate in the original track or necessarily overturn it, but I'm going to converse with it and create layers to it, you know? And it's like, you know, layers of land where things get more compressed and there gets to be more energy.
Yeah.
I think that also relates, I know we were talking the other night about, you know, when I was watching Strive last night, I was thinking, to me, their strongest performance is that one where they're doing it together. Because you get this energy that's like torque, you know, like trying to drive in a low gear when you're trying to go fast, you know? It's that stored energy feeling where, like, one person just waiting to explode.
Right.
I feel like that can come from the same pressure of knowing what your precedents are when you're writing and saying, I want to write to them, I want to imitate them, I want to try that, and then I want to pass it. I want to actually explode it, not to break it, but to honor it, you know? And I feel like that was happening in the Striver's Row piece. I feel like that happens in your stuff, you know? It's the goal for, you know, probably most writers.
Yeah. And I think an interesting question I want to touch on, you said like explore it, like share it. Does poetry have to be shared to be, you know, valuable? I mean, Shamoore was talking about, she used to write in her journal, like that might have been poems she never shared with anyone, but it could have been some of her best poems ever made. Does poetry have to be shared to be a successful poem?
No. For me, it starts with you as the writer. You can't share good stuff if you don't have good stuff with you. Like I have billions and billions of stuff. Like Howard will get random sentences like via text that he will never see again. Or like there'll be a whole poem just sitting there. Like it's for me to build myself up. So if I do share, I know it's something worthy to give to other people. Because if I'm going to put it out there, I want to make sure that they get it, understand it, take it in, and you know that it's good. So no, it doesn't have to be shared. But I mean, it usually is. If it's good, you want to share it.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Allie, I just, while we're talking about, you know, the sort of independent growth and that we've taken through poetry, you know, Shamoore, like sharing some of her story and whatnot. I also am curious to just like delve into that and how it pertains to you a little bit. Like, you know, how I've always known you as a poet, but
It's funny.
Yeah. But like, I don't know if myself or any of us has ever really gotten the background story of like how you started writing, like who you turn to for inspiration, these sort of things. Like if you just want to share?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't know either, in a way. And I think, I remember my grandmother passed away maybe like 10 years ago. And my family asked, at that point I was already in graduate school for writing, so I'm jumping ahead a second, but my family sort of asked me to write a poem to commemorate, you know, the occasion, which is the tradition of poetry, you know, and I was in this tough spot because I was like, do I write it in a way that's true to me, or do I write it in a way that's going to be sufficiently accessible? There's always that tension, right? So I read the poem, and, you know, people had a really good reception to it, and it wasn't even about that, you know, I had lost like a part of my body, it felt like, you know, and so I kind of was too exhausted to worry about that stuff, and it's just my grandmother's so close to me. But so at the end of it, someone comes up to my sister and says, wow, you know, your sister's a really talented poet. Has she always been such a good writer? And she's like, yeah, I don't know, she's always been a little weird. And so like the background in my family is kind of like poetry, you know, like what is this, you know? I know, you know, my dad has a construction company, and it's just, it was not like something that ever there was a statement against, but it just wasn't something that I grew up with like a garden of, you know. And in fact, even in college, I found it to be really exclusive. I didn't get any of it, you know, a lot of it. I was just like, I don't understand this. Like, why does it have to be so hard? And I think, as a teacher of mine said once, you know, we were over focusing on the branches of the tree instead of the trunk. And once I started, actually when I got out of college, I started reading poems and thinking, some of these are really good. And maybe there's a difference between quality poems and like less quality, you know. But then as I learned more, things became less difficult and stuff. But when I was in college, actually, you know, I'd always kind of written in general, like stories and things like that, and some poems, I guess. And when I got in college, I thought, oh, I'm going to be a fiction writer. So let me take the poetry workshops so that I can learn how to tell my stories as efficiently as possible. Like I'm gonna worry about learning how to distill like a narrative, you know, and an image. And then once I got in there, I was like, this feels really natural. And so, you know, it just kind of continued. But even after college, I was gonna go into international politics and stuff. I was supposed to go abroad and work. And the guy I was going to work for had a health problem that brought me back to like a temp job. And I was like, I might as well apply to graduate school. Like, I'll never get into these places, but like, who becomes a poet? You know, I was like, who really does this? So anyhow, it kind of, I don't know, happy accidents led me to do what I was probably meant to do.
Yeah.
That's
no, like that's that part, who becomes a poet, that is such, that leads into the next section.
Please, yes.
If I were to say, you know what, Dad, I'm not going to major in communications, I'm going to go and become a poet. Like, you know, it's just automatically just drop and start working fiercely hard on like my craft, and become this type of artist, you know, sell poetry or like whatever, or get published. There's a lot of like critics will say, you know, is that practical? Like, you're following after this, but are you going to make money after this? So like, I kind of want to touch on the idea of the starving artist in a sense, like in today's society where we're so money hungry in a sense for being a capitalistic country. It's like if you say you're a poet and you want to really pursue your profession, you might any art, and I even get this slack for being a film and television major because people don't think of anything outside of just watching a movie. You know, if you want to follow any art form, you're quickly criticized as opposed to someone who's an engineer because they can't see your value in society. So I wanted to ask, just this concept of starving artist, like how do you interpret that? Like, what does that mean to be an artist, and are there artists that can substantially, you know, make money, you know, like off of their profession?
I think another level to that is sort of the influence of technology on that, in that you know, unlike say even 100 years ago when, say, being a photographer was actually a craft because, you know, camera phones didn't exist, so somebody had to dedicate their time to purchasing a camera and doing that, or even publishing a book wasn't as easy as typing a Word document and throwing it up on Facebook. Now sort of these things have opened up to the broader public, which is, you know, sort of reduced them even more to, you know, you're not going to make money, and sort of lowered their status. So sort of speak towards those questions.
What do you say to those critics?
Can you lend me $50?
Allie's like, let me spit a quick poetry
you know,
for you.
Truer words had never been spoken, my friend, so cough it up, you know. I mean, they're right. you know, I was 25-year-old professor here, and my dad used to call me on the phone and be like, "Are you sure you don't want to be a pediatrician?" and it was coming from a place of love and concern, but also of not understanding. Like, what is this? You know, as the years have progressed, he'll call and say, "I read a book about Ronald Reagan. You know, he wrote poems too." Yeah, I mean, it's true, you know, and a lot of people have the moment when they make a choice between, unfortunately, now the way we are, we force people because of long work days and stuff to make a choice between vocation and occupation. There's an older tradition of poets who had quote unquote jobs and then had time. You know, Wallace Stevens was an insurance lawyer. William Carlos Williams was a doctor. There you go. You know? The people were statesmen. They were, you know, they had jobs, and then they had enough time to cultivate this other thing. Now it's harder, I think. And, you know, now if you publish a book of poems or anything else, you have to go on tour with it. So, like, what kind of job is going to let you do that? Like, you're going to have to choose sometimes. But to me, you know, that word value is the real answer. I love going to work every day. I love even the fact that it has to be like, I don't know, driving on the subway when I have to be thinking about lines. You know, I would be doing it anyhow, I think. And if I didn't, I don't know, would I be better? I'd sure be richer, for sure. I don't know. I will say that your question, though, relates to a bigger topic, which is I had a group of students at BC today.
We'll clip that part out.
In a class there called Studies in Poetry Required of All English Majors. And, you know, they come in looking at me like, when is it over? You know, the first day. And then, you know, by the end, at least a lot of them expressed, wow, like, this is mine, I own it. And today there was like a little bit of a kind of happy hype feeling about, you know, like, wow, this is something we all have. And I said, yeah, we got to think about this, though, because at this point, even really celebrated famous poets whose every book will be sold and reprinted, it's upside down in the publishing market. Like, you don't make any money for it. Publishers are just publishing it out of love. There is no market for it. And so I was saying to these students, and I would say to anyone listening and to you guys, like, how much do you care? How much do you care that it exists, that it continues to be developed? Because it's not that it's going to be dictated by a consumer market, but with anything that you think about, like with the accessibility of a ton of different arts and so on and so forth, like, how much do we want to actually put our money where our mouth is in terms of supporting it, cultivating it? You and I had a student earlier in the semester write a paper in response to an art critic who talked about how government funding for arts, like NEA grants and things like that, shouldn't come with stipulations for what is appropriate and what isn't. Like, they shouldn't, the freedom of speech and the freedom of artistic expression shouldn't be limited. And that student responded by saying, yeah, it shouldn't be, and therefore we shouldn't have any government funding of art. Like, let's just let the market decide, you know, and I was really scared by this because I don't get any money from the government, you know. I'm not in a position for that yet. Hopefully at some point I'll get a grant or something, I'll apply. But but if there's no, like, as a kind of culture and a democratic-ish kind of situation here, like, if we're not putting some money toward some funding into investment in the arts, like, what's going to happen to it? All the old stuff we all read and value and serves as touchstones for us, that was all funded. Like, Michelangelo wasn't doing it, like, with his grandfather's money or, like, with his, you know, like, house painting salary. You know, it was funded by people and tempered and limited in some ways, but also created through that. So anyhow, I'm kind of going off, but the idea of the starting artist, I think it's less visible now, and it's sort of still romanticized, but I think more there's kind of, you know how now everybody likes to talk about the middle class. There's like the middle class artist who's like, you know, we respect, but we don't actually want to support. You know, we want to hear the poems, or we want to hear the music or see the paintings, but, you know, they can do it themselves, you know. And then think of the class of people who are going to have access to defining the development of art if it's not funded more democratically.
So Shamoore, do you feel like you're pressured, like, on campus, like, as a current college student? Like, do people say, well, Shamoore, are you going to do something practical? Like, you know, Other like
She
I mean,
is.
right. I mean, like, if you were to say, like, I'm just gonna completely go with my poems and like become a published artist, like, would people be pressuring you, like, stay with what you're doing, like, practically, Shamoore, like, you know what I mean?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely, especially from my parents. I come
Yeah.
from a very traditional Jamaican household, so it's the idea of even being here at BU, like, trying to make something of myself where I know, okay, I'll definitely have some kind of money when I leave. And it's hard enough as a graduating student to get a job. So, yeah, I think I definitely would receive pressure. But I guess my 4 years here, it definitely gave me time to see how much I did want it. Like, how much does poetry really mean to me? How much does it really mean to me? So I think college is a perfect time to figure that out. Do you want to be a starving artist, or whatever that does mean at this point in time? I mean, yeah, it's hard. It is. Definitely talking. Me and Howard went to this event, a Strivers Row event, and they were talking about, they do get paid maybe $1,000 or $2,000 a show, but that doesn't mean anything because that's all they do. They have to do transport. One of the artists has a wife that he has to support, so they can go ahead and pursue it. But the same artist had to go get his degree because he needs to figure out where the money's coming from. So.
So what type of support do you see yourself getting? Is it like oh, that's nice, like, keep that up? Or do you see sort of, those around you really encouraging you to reach those next levels in your sort of passions?
It's a pursue more than one passion kind of a support. So my parents, they have actually never heard me perform.
What?
Oh my.
Never heard me perform.
Oh
Never.
They're listening, they should hear you.
They're missing out. Mama and Papa Simpson are missing out. Put out there.
They've been hanging out with my parents who have never heard me read either.
So are you guys both performing later on this show? Because this could be like the debut. This is.
I plan on asking them too. So whether they accept or deny, then yes, but continue.
Yeah, so I mean the support is there, it is, but it's like Allie said, it's coming from a place of concern and love and making sure that you're all set and stable because they're not always going to be around to help you out. So yeah, no. So I do have my plan. I have multiple passions.
That's awesome.
And by the way, like I've always sort of I think that I wouldn't want to confuse the impression of like parents not hearing us or family not hearing us or necessarily getting it with not supporting it. I feel like there's a kind of freedom and independence of this being like your own thing,
right?
And it's not about your parents or anyone else sort of giving a stamp of approval or not. Like it's your own, and like you're on your own, and it is your own, and I think there's a kind of value to that.
Right.
It's also like a useful lesson, for performing at other places.
Absolutely. And I also I have such appreciation for the starving artist, so to speak. Like, to me, that's sort of when you're in your most, this can be argued, but that's when you're sort of in your most vulnerable state. Like when you're really hungry to get to whatever status you want. Like if you're, a poet, like be it spoken word or, you're writing sort of, fictional stories or like whatever it is. If you want to be a published author or you want to go out and perform your spoken word poetry, like whatever the case is, like you're so vulnerable and I think susceptible to stopping quickly once you receive criticism. And I also think that comes from a rapper's point of view where, you can be often criticized, but like that same drive and that same starvation, that same hunger is what propels you forward. And the only problem that I think I often come across, like when I do sort of think about this idea, is what happens when you're not starving anymore, right? And so like what happens when the starving artist becomes the successful one, and now it seems as though the art form is taking a different route through that sort of person, and to some degree, I think that some artists will almost devalue their art once they make it, so to speak. Like, and I know, Greg touched on like hip hop just being like a youthful art form, and like Issa said how young it is and so on and so forth. And I think that one of the reasons why that is because we're always searching for like the next best thing and like who's starving more. And once that person isn't starving anymore, it's not to say that we don't support them, but I feel like we're not as eager to listen because it doesn't resonate with us the same way that it once did. You know, do you all sort of see that trend as well? Like, how do you think that? I guess one changes once success is reached or obtained, or whatever the case.
Maybe it's not even success, but rather sort of maybe support might not be the right word.
The comfort.
Yeah. So once you get that comfort and that everyone's behind you.
Yeah.
There's less urgency.
Do you think that the authenticity and like the starvation decreases like once that comes along? Like I don't know.
I think about this a lot because someone like Eminem, for example, like I had a student in my office today talking about how Eminem was his favorite rapper, and I had mixed feelings about it. Because he is, in the words of Dare McDaniel, a dope MC. Like he is. Yeah. I mean, just like kind of tongue dope. Twister. But I think. I don't know whether it's like hunger in terms of being a starving artist, kind of flirting with literally hungry, or if it's like newness. And that, like I heard Tom Wolfe once say about young writers, like writers in their 20s who are writing fiction, that like you live a whole life up to age 25 or so, and then you write a book and you have all this energy that's been stored up and funneled into this one book, and it's a great success, and then 2 years later you try to do it again. But you've only had 2 years.
Same thing happened with Jay-Z.
Yeah, well, he's where I was going. He's where I was going. You listen to that, and I harp on this all the time.
Yeah.
That 1998 Stretch Bobbito like freestyle battle, not really freestyle, but between him and Big L, it's so different. He took so many risks, and he gets blown out of the water by Big L. That's a separate conversation, but he takes so many risks, and he's so much more like willing to play with the rhythms, which is something, by the way, that I would defend Big Sean about. I feel like he's doing that now, even though he's having great commercial success.
Right.
But anyhow, I digress. Like at the beginning, I think it's easy to confuse like all that stored energy of many years with like hunger. Yeah. That said, I think there's something about, like, Jay-Z is the example I thought. He had his girls, and, like, big pimpin' period. And I thought that was kind of lazy. I think Lil Wayne has been lazy for, like, several years now. And these people are talented. I've said this before, and this is why I said, what can I really say on here? Right. When Eminem starts to sing, it sounds like a dying cat. Like, I just want him to stop, Like, use the talent you've been given,
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, if when we're listening to the person and the residue of their previous hits. I think some of it has to do with us as the listeners and what we're willing to buy or not. When I was in graduate school, I heard probably my favorite contemporary poet named Dean Young do a reading. And Iowa City's a really funny place because it has a real history of supporting creative writers. This is where I went to graduate school. And Dean Young had this reading, and all the people from my workshop were there and all that stuff in the program, but like the townspeople came to hear him. They knew he was a funny poet, and the first or second poem he read, they started laughing, and then they never stopped. Like they were waiting for the next occasion to laugh. And at the end, I thought, wow, what a great time that was. We all went out for drinks, and I said to him, like, you must have really, that was a great performance, and like people really received it well. There's so much laughter. And I said, funny, like some of the things people were laughing at, like I didn't really think were funny. Like they were kind of dark. And he said, the first or second poem, like once they started laughing, I knew that they weren't listening anymore. They weren't listening. They were expecting me to be funny, and they were waiting for the next opportunity to laugh. And it's a freedom, but it's also a point of like, well, what's the point? And sometimes I wonder if on the other side of it, like rappers, Jay-Z, anyone might feel like people are just expecting certain things, and like I gotta give them what they want.
Wow, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a common debate that extends to sort of between all art forms. Does the issue lie with the audience, people who are receiving it? Are people sort of setting these expectations too high, or just the fact that they're making expectations?
That's right. Yeah.
Itself, or is it in the artist sort of feeding set expectations, or sort of trying to meet certain standards? Or sort of like selling out in a sense. Where does the issue lie?
A reluctance to accept change, almost.
Kinda. I mean, I'm not really sure what I'm trying to say.
Like Jay-Z's work with Linkin Park made me like just want to turn off my radio. Okay, like
really?
And yes, I know. I'm. Yeah.
Jigga Man, we have no beef with
you. As an example because he's so supreme.
Yeah.
But like, you know, I would be guilty of that, for example, of, like, being uncomfortable with people's change because, like, I'm going to them for a certain reason, you know. Is that fair? That's not fair of me, you know. Like, a lot of my poems are really dark, and on the way here, I saw someone had, like, thrown a little cup of ketchup, and I thought of this other poet named Amy Nezuko Matatil, she's Indian and Filipino. She's a great new poet. I mean, way better than me. She's kind of a big thing. Anyhow, I thought, you know, she would write a great poem about this this dish of ketchup that's like on Com Ave. I should try to do that. And then I thought, oh, no, people expect certain things in my writing, you know. So I think it's a sort of interplay between, like, how much are you willing to risk your audience's favor for, like, something that you think could elevate. And by the way, one last thing about this, when Shamoore was talking about parents before, I was thinking, you know, like, parents or other people might not get it for the starving artist thing. Parents might not get it, but part of the role of the poet or any artist is to educate, and I don't mean that in an arrogant way, but is to sort of strive and educate and expose, and then, like, kind of hope that people get more flexible, you know. And I think that's got to be true of the artist. It's got to be true of the recipients, of the, you know, the audience, etc.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely agree, because I guess going off of the whole writing something that people don't expect of you, that's, I think, I have a lot of poems that just didn't work, but then there's a couple that I was really proud of because it was me kind of stepping out of my comfort zone and trying to think, well, I was going through a lot of my stuff, and a lot of my stuff is dark. I didn't, you know, really realize that. And so trying to write, I guess, a happy poem, whatever that's called, trying to write one of those was a very, very hard process. But I think that, you know, it starts bad and it'll get better. It's one of the ones that you sit there and you continue to work on. And it gets to a point where it's so dope, people don't care if it's you or not.
It's almost as if, like, whether or not the final product is what you expect it to be, the fact that you're sort of working through that and trying and exercising, the lyrical exercise, trying to get your, you know, try something new and work your brain out in a way that it hasn't necessarily been worked out before is sort of what you get out of that, not necessarily the end.
I think one question I really wanted to talk about was just looking towards the future. You guys are definitely accomplished, like, artists. Like, I would say so. You know,
I would say she is.
I think, no. But I think you can call anyone accomplished someone who is doing their thing and able to perform in front of an audience. Because not everyone can do that. You know, like, you have to take ownership of your own accomplishments. You know.
Sure.
And so you don't need a medal to say you're an accomplished artist.
That's right.
True.
That's true.
And so, like I said, I think you guys are accomplished artists. Howard, you included. Greg, do you do something like
Yeah.
Are you gonna put me on the
I'm
spot?
just saying.
MC Greg.
And so my question would be, what advice would you give to young people who are trying to become, like, you know, artists in their own right, but are dealing with, like, the parent pressure and societal pressure of, like, being practical? You know, what advice would you give to them trying to get to where you're at?
This might sound cliche or not, but the simplest advice I can give is to write every day. Just write every day. Like, it doesn't matter, because some days it'll be really, really hard to write, like, maybe 2 lines, and then some days it just clicks. So when you get days that click more frequently, and after that it really doesn't matter, because you'll realize, you know, I'm doing it for me. That's what it comes back to. It doesn't really matter what the pressures are. You're eventually doing it for yourself. So
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. You know, read and practice. I feel like the other stuff, all the stuff that you'd expect about, like, heart and believe and all that stuff, I feel like a lot of that will take care of itself. But, you know, if you're getting any objections, like, hear what they're saying, which is, I want you to be meticulous, I want you to be careful, I want you to be studious, I want you to be goal-oriented. Be all of that, but do it in the realm of art, you know? Like, take all that pathy stuff and apply it to your art, you know? Act like you're going to med school and be up all night and, you know, study, and imagine you're taking Orgo,
Right,
you know,
absolutely.
Abrams and all that stuff. Like, imagine you got Abrams as your poetry teacher, you know? Shout out, Benjamin. Imagine you've got that on your plate and treat it like that, you know what I mean? And that sort of effort is, I mean, I think there's a lot of talented people who, you know, are successes because they're good at it, but they're not exposed. And I feel like, you know, it's the people who do write every day, as Shamoore is saying, who can make more of an impact. And then I actually want to say one other thing about that, which is embrace the paradox. You know, because I'm obsessed with number 10 on Black Album.
Yes.
You know the line, Che Guevara with bling on, you know, Che Guevara with bling. It's like such such a great line. I mean, no more dissing of Jay-Z, but it's such a funny line. But like, I feel like there's this idea of things being like a drawer that will close but not shut perfectly. Like things don't fit perfectly. And I feel like in the realm of rap and in the realm of poetry, that's embraced. You know, like that's what's meaningful is the fact that there's this paradox. Like, do you love something? Do you hate it? Both. Is it dark, but is it motivating? Both, you know? And I feel like that's something that's really special about the intersection between those two that is not true of a lot of other fields, in my opinion. You know, in medicine, someone gets better or they don't. You know what I mean? There are dimensions. I don't want to be reductive, you know, but I feel like there's I don't know, it's special to them, I think.
Absolutely. So now, this is a time where I ask each of you to perform something that you may or may not have, if you'd be willing to do so, and then, you know, I guess elaborate on the piece a little bit after it's shared.
Get on the mic.
Right? Kick some flavor in these listeners' ears.
It's like the basement. Oh, it really is.
Who's Jay-Z and who's Big L?
Right? Exactly. Right? You know, so no. I mean, meanwhile, they're looking. You know, I'll just say that this has been wonderful and enriching conversation. Just like this has definitely been one of our. I'll go out flat out say it, best podcasts that we've had. So yeah, if you all want to add to that with some poetry, that'd be awesome. Whoever wants to go first, that's fine.
Well, you know, I don't want to follow Shamoore. She's gonna own it, you know. Yeah. So just to, you know, do you guys want like one poem? You want two poems? Like, what do you know? Anything. I don't know what you have time for. Like, what do you want?
Time is kind of endless. Like, we were gonna try to keep it to a half hour, but we're well over that now. So it's like, I'm sure. I mean,
I don't want to overstay my welcome.
Yeah. No. Whoever's listening is probably gonna continue listening.
Hope.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. They definitely
nice.
will.
Ideally,
they definitely will.
Nice.
Yeah. Just
right,
whatever you feel called to do.
You know, I'll do what I've been saying, and I'll decide.
Okay.
I'll do two. How about that? Okay. So I just revised this poem. I wrote it initially a long time ago after a breakup. All my poems are breakup poems. My poor husband is like, who are these guys? You know? But yet when I said to him last night, I was like, what should I read? And he was like, oh, read the Hermit Crab poem, which is a breakup poem that I'm not going to read, actually. But, these breakup poems. So then the second one I think I'll read is one that I then decided to write about him, because I thought, gee, it is really off balance that like I have breakup poems.
Right.
Yeah. So, all right, so the first one is called As the Street Lamp Flickers, and it's the breakup poem. Yeah, so I'll just read it. Hey, baby, I say, hey, sugar plum, fairy, you don't seem to want to do me any favors anymore. Those green, quiet bedtime flights, no suddenly, no wrapping the legs around the legs, no more. Funny, I feel your forehead for heat. This hush is your drowsy disburdening, lazy unpacking me arm, from you, from limb, by palms, on each finger stolen, and lacking place to pause. Then there you are, shoulders I don't know, on a fractured sidewalk, shaking that bag of me onto the street, shame, full fallout hair, strands, nightclothes whispered into, whispered off, keys, items boxed, unboxed, books, pages with words, dedications, initials, names you don't recognize, and so rename. A plain of rainbow oil, I spread. I'm a slick mess. I need to be contained, poured into an engine, a hissing street lamp. It's late, I say. You blink me away as a puddle of water, dragging itself back into air, as a cat hit, trailing the memory of legs across a road to a low shrub. Something natural, you say. The timing, you say. You say we'll meet again. Maybe if I ever see the sun as it is, not a theory of yellow light, but that round ball of endless gas burning, explained and not explained, a juddering reaction, maybe when the oozing part of me says love, then something new, something more. After all, where does the lamplighter sleep? Having collapsed his ladder for the day, he will set it up again, fall over and over for the burn of that hurricane flame. That's a breakup poem.
My goodness. My goodness.
Well,
Yes.
you know.
Yes. Oh man, that was awesome.
So, if you want another one, I don't
Let's
know.
jump to Shamoore.
Yeah,
We'll
let's do it.
back and
Oh
forth.
God.
I have to
Okay.
follow her.
Please,
Now you-
Wow.
follow me. I can stop there.
Okay, so this one is titled Angry Generation.
Okay.
This is the first piece I ever felt like really, 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 really proud of, and the first piece I've ever performed. So here it goes. I love those intense conversations when we make perfect nonsense and the saliva in our mouth gets too excited so it waters and jumps from our lips like the sparks of rockets from early geniuses into heavenly galaxies where glory resides. Yes, we are a generation of nonsense, but is this nonsense that brought the ruckus to shake and shape that piece of paper allowed human beings to breathe separate but equally? We, the generation of reckless love and hopeless dreams that ignorantly live between reality and imagination, busting at the seams of life so full of possibilities that sometimes we forget to breathe that air contaminated by the great minds of Du Bois. Yes, I am double consciousness, that double-edged sword that ripped my insides outward so I can wear my heart on my sleeve, the sleeve that wiped the tears after I realized maybe I don't belong in this world and maybe I never will. What is there here for me when my so-called brothers and sisters rip down the potential I have yet to turn kinetic and the white slaver owner descendants only accept me on terms of entertainer and athletics? What is there here for me in this damned world, the one we fought so hard to mold, twist, and create equal that it imploded within its own creation, allowed its segregated poison to be silently inhaled into the lungs, to grow like HeLa cells that never lived a day to see the lacks that lacked health insurance from the same government that lacked to inform them of Henrietta's contribution as a colored woman to the same men who ripped the love from nurture and purity from nature. We are angry, tired of these money green chains that choke the life out of the hopes of a college degree and create the young black man's guilty plea. We, the generation of expression, rainbows seeping through our pores as we crisscross and b-boy on those cardboard mats just so the world could possibly stop. Stop to notice the fact that this generation is silently being tortured between two worlds that divide the bubbling identity running through our veins jugular. Is how this generation stole another soul, blue eyes, big smiles, soul pierced by blue steel. We, my generation, discarded the soul of Connor Reynolds before the age of 18, all at the hands of a young black man's inexcusable, temporary insanity. So now my sad, hopeless, y'all youngins don't appreciate life generation sits behind the same steel we took it with, where we're violently running towards a generation who could be healers and lovers but choose to ignorantly disrespect our forefathers and no, not the ones who built this country on a one-sided sheet of paper, but the ones who sweat warm earthly tones of hundreds of other countries to soak this infertile soil with hope so we could grow into the place that they imagined for their children. We're subtle, not stupid, just silently angry. I can understand why his sense of style is not in trend and why we don't hire the young girl with the slight accent. And yes, I have taken several different history courses, so pardon my voice from getting hoarse after tirelessly trying to explain to this ignorant generation why the North Slope on Beacon Hill, closer to the sewage, was never a misfortune of luck but a choice to pluck. Pluck slowly those small feathers we as a group of non-white colors begin to grow in our spines to fly high enough to be considered godly, and maybe it would even out with this rotten image here on our society so we could just be equal. Just equal is all I want and nothing more than to show you that our generation has a hell of a lot to be pissed about.
Yes.
I caught the WEB.
Wow.
Did you?
Yeah, there's a bunch of it.
Oh my.
That double
References in there.
Yeah. My English classes, you know?
Beautiful.
You know.
Honestly,
You see what I'm saying? You see why I wanted to go first?
they should right back off.
Oh, come
Feel so
on.
inclined.
Come on, Allie. You have to.
Only if I'm going to pass it back to you.
Yeah,
That's my,
you'll pass
okay.
it. It's
All
cool.
right,
It's
all
cool.
Sorry.
So listen, I'm going to take a risk. Like I said,
All
I'm going to
about
put my
risks.
money where my mouth is, and I'm going to do the one that is less finished. You know what I mean? So
Okay.
this is the one that I just
Premiere.
I mean, last night was like, all right, you know, I'm finishing this, you know.
Right.
So it is hot off the presses. So if you have any suggestions, you know.
Gotcha.
So this is the one that I tried to write for my husband, and it isn't the celebration I'd intended, but you know, I started writing about him, and I thought, I can't imagine being without him. And that doesn't come from a place of not being able to be by yourself, but, you know, from a place of, like, flying takes two wings, you know?
Yeah. Yes.
So it's called People Don't Know What We Mean When We Say Us. Will it be you? Will someone else trim your fingernails, still growing, while I sit in a black dress, in a wicker chair? Will my head bend or drop, heavy with the dim bulk of your body? Wicker seems too temporary. Everything will be wrong then. Its thin flutes suited to the mouth of a zoo panda or a white porch painted over and over and over until the dark spaces between the planks clot, then swell. For a while. Wood gives too. The animal under the porch has been scratching again. Soon it will get through, be in the walls, and who will I tell if not you? Or will we still talk as we do now, one voice questioning, the other silent like a clock? I've felt the minutes pulse and tick. The first time the young surgeon pulls something from a heart, he lies in the zone, a wet field, standard issue boots, inquiring of the ground a notch, hollow enough for slow breathing. He believes he can fix the beat of a song only you and I hear. Bass blasts from behind a cloud, from the earth itself, his eyes closed now, one finger sweeping the sweet, warm muscle for metal, another pressing the soldier's throat. Hot off the
My
presses.
goodness.
Wow.
Yes. Yes.
And yet, we generally laugh and watch reality TV. So paradox, you know what I'm saying?
Shout out to Allie's husband. Shout out to Allie's husband.
Wow.
You shout out. Right back onto you,
Yeah.
Shamoore.
All right.
right back.
Well, this one was the hard piece. I actually consulted Howard for this one because it was out of my realm. So I guess Allie was like, you know, just telephone. How do you say that? Like telephonic connection? Because this one's not finished. This one is just gradually working on it. Yeah. Okay. So it's called Just Existence. What does it feel like to be happy with yourself? To be a happy that creates a home in my skin and forever has a giving, honest, and authentic love affair with the young woman I found in the treasure of my thoughts and in the light of my soul. A happy that doesn't sit on the corners of my mother's smile or linger in the scent of a man, but it most certainly screams through my soul and curls my toes so tight you would have thought them 10 nubs, giving me a Saturday night heels kind of balance on that cobblestone in that city where all I am is a beautifully sane stranger laughing at nothing. At that beautiful music silence makes when peace is found. Happy because on those morning walks to air out the filth of last night and finally breathe in the new opportunity to make better mistakes, that early silence tasted like a day that has yet to be tainted by human imperfection. Smiling because my soul is made of laughter that sings angels to sleep, and my giggles awake the childhood found in dandelions before they've all grown up and forgotten about the innocence of kisses and cooties. Happy because my locks have no dread in them as they caress the rims of my collarbones, cups from which my lover drinks in all my natural goodness. No taste of watermelon, but of intimacy and understanding, becoming really drunk in love. A woman of great influence and responsibility with ambition and dreams painted so beautifully it shames the thoughts of doubt you let dare whisper in your ears as soon as you heard me speak. in a drive, and perseverance so fierce it engulfs existence as we know it and spits back nothing but the goodness we were created from. A woman who is proud of the tragedies she's overcome because they were honest, sordid, and bitter, because my truth is my happiness and the key to existing in a perpetual moment of enlightenment. Dismantling trivial darkness with a faith strong enough to bring a church to its knees in prayers that crumble the doubt and fear still sitting on the chest of my friends who've yet to recognize the eyes staring back at them in the mirror every single day. To be happy, that makes me smile, because after this world has ripped me of my own skin and all the vital things that make me who I am, I'm more than matter. I'm still more than a tangible thing. I'm more than just existence.
That was crazy.
That'll get me every time.
That was really a treat. That was really a treat.
No, like, thank you both so much for sharing those. Like,
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Yeah, it's great.
I
No
think
problem.
it's like really amazing that you guys chose to focus on
Poetry,
poetry,
yeah.
as not only one of your shows but as your last show. It's
Yeah,
like a real
that's-
honor,
yeah.
you know.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. No problem.
And can we just have one more like sign off for Greg and Howard?
Oh, no.
Oh,
That's
Wait a minute. Now hold on a second. Now Howard's not going to perform anything.
Yeah, Howard-
I mean,
Howard-
come on. We
this-
give and we
this-
give and we give.
Howard.
And like,
This
what
isn't
do we
about
get?
me.
You know?
Howard, come on. Really? You have something on your phone. I know you do.
Oh my
I know you
God.
have something on your phone, Howard.
Okay. All right. because
It
I'ma
either is
feel-
or isn't a collaboration. You know. What I'm saying?
Oh damn. Okay, now I'm on the spot. Okay, so
Yeah.
no. All right. So I guess this is like one of the raps that are most fresh on my mind. It's off of the BU Hip Hop mixtape that just dropped last week.
And where should they find that out?
They can find that on buhiphop.bandcamp.com, consisting of hot beats and more than 30 students. So no, this is a verse off the single called "In My Zone." This is my verse. As soon as I wake up, I pray, thanking God for another day. As I sit back and contemplate on my younger days, trying to get through puberty, back in Benjamin Banneker Middle School, never hung with fools. I'm a different caliber. Chasing tail in the hallways, we always try and get these numbers and hit the books and get all A's. My dad told me before, beauty is all brains. Pick, choose, refuse, and cruise once you get on stage. And here I am at 21, rocking mics, precise, lyrics concise, no strife, got no time for fights. Chilling with good dudes, we drink a few brews, never bruise for my booze. Whenever we show and prove, we immune up in the booth spitting. We got a tight image, prolific bars make you think we got a life sentence. But we just living free, fleeing from captivity, be blowing up. Tell these A&Rs we need TNT.
Done. I'm done. I can't.
And I remember when I first heard that and the prolific bars.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, Howard. Yes.
Sometimes you just know you
Dude.
got it.
Yeah. You hit
That
it.
sounded like Black Thought.
No, appreciate that. Thank you.
I just heard that verse over the weekend.
Oh, really?
On the album.
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
Oh my.
That was nice.
Thank you, bro. Thank you. Definitely go cop that. It's called
That's gonna rattle around up.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Where can they find you? How you can
they can find me on Facebook just now. That's all. That's my only form of social media. Oh, actually, wait, no, Twitter too. I have Twitter. I just don't use that much. Yeah. So, but no. So, Facebook is obviously just Howard DePass Jr. Twitter is One Time for Your Mind. Time and mind spelled with Y's. Yeah, and definitely cop the BU mixtape. It's called BU Hip Hop Volume 2, The Return.
Yeah. And Shamoore and Allison, do you guys want to where can people find you? To hear more about your works? I mean, we might as well, get that exposure. You know what I mean?
I'm on Facebook as Shamoore Simpson, my real name.
Find her in the
On Twitter and Instagram, I am at lovestainedword. It's one whole thing. And yeah, that's about it.
I'm pretty much on the floor with my 2-year-old all the time, or in my office grading papers. But I'm actually all joking aside, I'm gonna launch AllisonAdair.com this summer, because the only reason I am is because there is another Allison Adair publishing poem.
Really?
Seriously, exact same spelling, everything.
Really?
If you do Allison Adair and poet, if you Google it, the first thing that comes up, Poetry Soup, that is not me. Like, I want to stress.
Okay.
And big shout out to that Allison Adair. It's like, but those are definitely not mine.
Right.
So I'm going to have heavy disambiguation to make sure that we both get credit where credit is due, I guess. So AllisonAdair.com is coming this summer, and we'll see.
Awesome.
Major deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so I guess it's just about. There's still so much more that we could have talked
Yeah.
about.
Oh my
We
God.
never got to talk about the roots and
I know.
Concerto
I
di
know.
Desperado.
Oh, God.
Okay.
Poetry,
Like,
like sound like a UFO.
we could have gone into the actual depth and content of those bars that y'all just dropped on the mic, like the intersection of poetry and
a lot more to say.
within
There's a
academia.
lot,
Like,
yeah.
oh my God, I feel so robbed.
Okay, can I say one other thing?
Please.
Is that all right? Which is that, every time a person thinks about bringing rap and poetry into the academy, they sometimes say, well, is it going to become ossified? Like, is it going to kill it, And not in a good way.
Right.
and so, like, that makes me just question, like, what are we doing in our classes, So, like, if ever you feel like bringing something to class is going to kill it, then, like, start thinking about what you're doing in class, So, anyhow.
Wow.
It's a good place
Words
to
of
end. That's a
wisdom.
good place to end.
Definitely is.
So once again, you guys are listening to The Common Thread. My name is Greg Wilson.
I'm Howard DePass Jr.
And I'm Issa Kenyatta.
Signing off for the last time. Of our senior year. Not last time for Issa. Look back next semester.
You definitely will see Issa
fall
again.
2014.
Wow.
And we'll bring that flavor for your ears.
I like that.
Bring that flavor for your ears. All right, yo. Peace.